melt is when I'm ocean wave.
Today on Racing Legends podcast, I have trainer Danny Velazquez, based in Philadelphia Park. Danny recently made a post on Facebook talking about the struggle it is to find new owners in the thoroughbred racing game. And as a person who's owned horses myself, I thought I'd reach out to Danny. Give quick background of Danny. He was a hot bug rider in Philadelphia many years ago, I guess, Danny.
Yeah.
But, won 212 races and 3.6 million in purses. Very successful career as a jockey.
Yeah.
And later on, like his dad, I believe, right? Alfredo's your dad.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
One of my favorite trainers, amazing trainer. Danny became a trainer around 2012, I believe, right, Danny?
Correct.
And you've won more than $7 million in purses, 245 races, top horses. Leoban on a prayer, right?
Yep.
Okay. So Danny, did I get most of that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've been kind of out of the game in terms of, I guess I call it Parx Racing now. Years ago, Pennsylvania was doing great because they got the slot machines and
slot revenue.
Yeah, they have a great breeding program. Purses were enormous. So for a while, it seemed that Philadelphia or Parx was flying high. What is the environment now in terms of the purses and the racing generally there?
The purse structure is decent. It's livable. I mean, Parx does a great job hosting their trainers. We have one of the best programs as far as having healthcare provided to us. After 20 starts, Parx provides full healthcare for myself, my wife, and my children. Oh, awesome. I think it's one of the best healthcare programs in the country. I think Parx is one of the only tracks in the country that actually does that. We also have a pension plan on the back end. I think it's like $100 or something like that gets taken out every start on your purse, and it goes towards your pension. So Parx is great like that. The part that Parx is lacking right now is a structure to kind of celebrate their horsemen and put them out there so the public can see and we can get more viewers or new blood into the business. And right now we don't have that. I think the business right now is struggling because New York and Gulfstream, Kentucky, those bigger tracks are consuming all the best horses. And I feel like a lot of the super trainers have 200-300 horse stables and it's leaving everybody else out. If you have 200 horses and you got a little trainer just trying to make it, you're not going to make it. It's very tough to compete against a guy that has all the stock. And right now that's what's going on. I feel like right now there's no fresh eyeballs on horse racing. There's no new clientele coming in. All the clients that I have are already past their 60s, and I have no young guys. Like I sat and talked to my wife the other day. I'm like, man, once these guys go, like, what do I got, right? Yeah. And that's where I was pondering, and that's where I wrote that post on Facebook. Like, man, you're starting to see it now.
So where did your father get his clients when he first got into the game? And were they locally based in Philadelphia?
No. My dad was originally in New York, and he had a lot of New York-based clients would find him here at Parx because I'd be like, hey, send the horses that couldn't make it in New York so much. Send them to Freddie. And, my dad's always had those connections. But at the same time, those connections are now dead because they were the older generation, the guys from the 80s and 90s. And then I came in the 2000s as a jockey. The business was okay, but I really feel like now we're in a precipice where we're in limbo because I don't see any young guys at the track. I don't see anybody in their young 30s or 40. I'm 40. I just turned 40. I don't see no 40-year-olds really getting involved in horse racing, and yet alone buying horses to invest, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a little scary at the same time.
Well, you mentioned super trainers before. I remember there was a big shift in the game. I guess it was around the mid-90s maybe, or when Scott Lake and his stable got huge. Yeah. And he moved. He had a lot of horses in Maryland where I was based. And he was all over the place. He was in Charlestown. And when you talk about super trainers, you're more referring to guys like Steve Asmussen and Fletcher. You're not talking about guys like Lake as much? Are you?
Lake got really big at one point in the business. You know, he was I think leading trainer of the nation at one point. And that's not so much what I'm knocking. I'm not knocking the guy that has all the horses. I'm just trying to say, like, listen, there's limited clientele out there. So I think if you're hoarding 200-300 horses, that's eliminating a bunch of little 20-horse stables out the rip. And my father was telling me back in the early 70s and 80s, he goes, all the Hall of Fame trainers, they only had the max they would ever have was 15 to 20 horses. You never heard of a guy having 120 head. You never heard of a guy having even 40. He goes, all these Hall of Fame guys kept a 20-horse outfit, and that was a lot back then. And the business was going that way. But as the business progresses now, I think more owners are inclined to go towards the big outfits, and the little guys are just falling in the whim. Just, you know, there's a lot of good horsemen out there that aren't getting opportunities. And I'm starting to feel it too. Like, unfortunately, I'm not getting the opportunities I thought I would be getting, right? And I think I have a pretty polished career, and I have enough clout where I can say, hey, you know, I made it to the Derby with a $5,000 horse. I've won graded stakes in New York. I won the Remsen. I won the Sanford. I've won, I think, 5 total stakes in the New York circuit, which is tough to do with you know, horses that I paid 15,000, 35,000, 5,000, nothing that over 50, right? So I'm doing it on a beer budget, and I don't feel like the clientele at Parx is big enough to really get you in the door in the bigger races, because they don't have the deep pockets that the New York guys have, right? Yeah. And on the same time, there's guys that are just not even willing to invest anymore because the business is very rocky. There's a lot of new regulation involved, and it's making it really hard for the trainer to do his job properly. The owners are getting a little bit harassed, as you can see on the media with, you know, even Rapoli pushing back on a lot of the HISA things that are going on. So the business isn't in trouble that way. And as a young man in my 40s, in my early 40s, I'm starting to really see it now, because I'm like, wow, what's going on? Where is the clientele? Where's the fan base? You know?
Yeah, you also feel it in the wagering, because the wagering is getting tougher and tougher because of the money from the syndicates. You mentioned first of all, you do a great job as a trainer. The bettors love you, and I know you've always been successful. So when I saw your post, I was surprised, because I was like, well, that's a guy I thought was doing great. Why do you think the owners choose the big stables instead of like when I was in the game, I had Damon DeVico in Maryland, similar to you. Damon does a fantastic job.
Right.
He's not too big, so answer my phone calls. I feel like he needs my business, so he'll listen to me.
Correct.
I never wanted a big guy, because I figured, why would he return my calls? Why would he care what I'm saying? But why do people choose the big guys?
You know what? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's because they just want the name recognition. Like, oh, I have a horse with Chad Brown, and you know, that can give them a little voice to their ego. I truly don't know. I think it's coming down to lack of fan base in general, and just the lack of new owners that understand the business side and the horseman side. I think they just feel more comfortable. Oh, that guy, he has to be successful because he's number one. I'll go to him. I think that's what it comes down to. Like, just people are naive to what a good trainer is, and think just because that guy has all the horses, that has to be the right move. When in retrospect, there's guys that are, I'm not saying way better, but are just as good as them, that can have a little stable, and they're doing just as good with less product, right? They're not getting the $500,000 horses. They're not getting 20, 30 babies thrown at them, all top tier horses. They're just getting the regular horses, and they're doing really well with that. So I think that's where the business is kind of stuck between high end and mid-level and low end. There's no like real middle anymore. You're getting top tier horses on one end, and then there's everybody else just scrambling.
How do the owning syndicates like the My Racehorse and the West Points, how does this factor in? I'd imagine they would like to sell the big guy, the big person, as you were saying before. Yeah. But also, I know when I had vet bills, I looked at everything. I looked at everything. Of course. You couldn't put a big vet bill over me without me questioning it. Why did that cost that much? Is it? And I would guess when you have 40, 50 owners, they care about every dollar a little bit less than a solo owner would care about.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah,
if you got a guy that owns 20, 30 horses with you, and he's getting 20 different vet bills from 20 different horses, he's gonna not look at that and be like, oh, well, I spent $100 on this horse. They're not looking at it that they're just looking at it as mass production, and they already have the capital to sustain. As a guy like yourself, when you own one horse, two horses, and you're not so much on a budget, but you're trying to maintain the bills reasonable,
budget.
you're gonna look at the bill and be like, oh, this horse, why is the bill $1,500? What happened to him, Danny? And unfortunately, costs of everything in this business, as in anything, has went up 50%. I was just talking to a buddy of mine in 2020, before COVID, I was paying $19 for a bag of feed. That same bag of feed now is $27, right? So the other problem that horsemen are running into, they're trying to keep their day rate enough where I can try to get a new owner, but at the same time I have to make my day rate go up because of the cost. So the new guy that's coming in going, well, why is everything so much? My buddy told me that 5 years ago he was paying this. Yeah, but that was 5 years ago. The economy has completely changed. Right now, inflation's through the roof, and it's really hurt us as well, because the trainers are trying to maintain a fair day rate for their clientele, where they're almost going broke because they're not really making that much money coming in. And the clients are like, wait, why is this so much? So that's where it's getting crazy, because now everybody's getting, they're like pulling back on you, saying, hey, why are these bills so much? You're like, everything's more expensive. Your vet bill, it used to be maybe in 2020 for one horse, it would rough around $500 to $800. Now that same bill is $1,200, $1,300, right?
Yeah. So Danny, are you more worried that your owners are going to dry up and it's going to be hard to make a living, or
Yeah,
are you already feeling this pinch?
I'm feeling it. I'm
Success?
feeling it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm really feeling it right now, because I thought, I had a good run in 2021, by getting to the Derby, winning stake races in New York. I thought that showcased my skills enough to go, okay, somebody got to go, oh man, that's a young guy doing really well with these, not cheap, like cheaper babies, and they're getting to the bigger races. Let me give him a chance. The opposite has happened. None of that happened. And I'm going, like, what do I got to do to bring in a big client? Or and then I just, like I said, I wrote that post the other day, just going, they're not out there. And it comes down to, horse racing has dropped the ball bringing in new eyes. I think it's an old king sport. We're stuck in our ways, and we have to reinvent ourselves, like NASCAR, hockey, sports that struggled in a little bit, but we have to reinvent ourselves to bring in a new fan base. We don't have a fan base. I mean, right now I live 5 miles from the track. Like you said, there's a casino there. I could tell my neighbor, say, hey, you know where Parx Racing and Casino is? They go, oh yeah, absolutely. Been there a few times for dinner. I say, there's a racetrack there? No clue, right? And that's the biggest problem. Like, to not know that there's actually horses there is mind-blowing, but that's the tide we're going against.
I remember one time I was at either Penn National or Charlestown, and I guess I hadn't been in a while. And I remember I had the hardest time finding out where the racetrack was. I couldn't find it. I was in a casino and I couldn't find where was the racetrack. And I had been there, years earlier when it was just a racetrack. And it was, you would never know that there was racing going on outside. So, when you look at your model now, I was in the game a long time, and I had lots of different trainers. And for example, I'd have a guy like Runco at West Virginia that would take horses off track for certain days because he can save money. He had a rotation. I had Joan Reynolds up here in West Virginia. She had her own farm. There were other models that people would train under. Do you see any other models that that are successful now? Or because I like the fact that you're getting healthcare, because that's one of the problems of being an entrepreneur, is that you can't. It's hard to get benefits when you're an entrepreneur.
It's hard to get benefits.
That's promising to me. But do you see any models out there that are working for trainers right now?
No, I talk to a lot of guys, and usually if you're not in the top 5, most guys are struggling. I mean, it's hard to win races. First of all, right? There's a lot of shenanigans going around in the sport. HISA has introduced a whole new level of craziness, because now we're following these rules and regulations, and we have to be on our best behavior. But HISA also is not. They rolled out their program, and it's still messy. There's still a lot of tweaking they have to do, because they're hurting a lot of good guys that, the positives that people are getting are for stupid things, nothing that's really performance enhancing, and they're hurting them. It's making everybody feel like they're a criminal before they're what's the word I want to use?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Without even
guilty. You're guilty before
without
doing anything. Yeah, it's insane. HISA, they come into your barn if they want to raid you like it's the FBI, and you're like, oh, what did I do?
I think that's one of the problems with racing, is that when you're in the game, you realize there's a big difference between overages and trying to win, and people
correct
who are doing kind of what Jason Service and those guys. I don't want
to
but it's a different game when
nefarious.
You're because the medication rules change for jurisdictions. There's timing, and then there's a lot of nuances, and it's not really doping. I remember I interviewed Barry Irwin, and he was really, and also Terry Finley from West Point. They were very optimistic about these rules, about how it's going to change things. And I'm like, first of all, I feel like one of the underlying problems is there's a horse shortage, and so we're racing horses more. So if you're trying to do the responsible thing and not race them so much, the racing office is constantly calling you and telling you got to fill a race. And then if you don't fill the race, then they start denying you stalls. So you have every pressure to race your horses a lot. So you have to use medication. And then when you use the medication, they want to call you a criminal sometimes. So
exactly.
There's this gray area that it's not like people are trying to really cheat. They're trying to make the game. They're trying to make the game work. And I think there's a disconnect between cheating and what horsemen
and therapeutics
to make it work.
We're like, for me, for instance, claiming horses, especially, you get a horse that's a hard knocker, has 30, 40 races under his belt. You need to help that horse some way, somehow, by getting a vet and going over the horse and making him feel better. That has been taken away from us, and this is where the business gets really shady.
How's that been taken away from you? How's that been taken away?
Because now, like, for instance, if I have a horse and I want to tap the ankles and take a little bit of that pressure and that juice out, they give you a 14-day rule. But here's the problem. Once you do that for 14 days, by the time you're able to run that horse, you're 3-4 weeks in. So that vet work that you did, out the door, because nothing holds up for 4 weeks, right?
I got you.
So you're helping the horse to train, basically. That's it. Not for the race, not for anything, because the window of time that HISA is giving you is just crap. They're like, listen, you could do it, but after 14 days, and then listen, there's no point now, because everything I did 4 weeks ago doesn't matter, because now the horse is back to where he was. So that's not helping. On the other hand, the guys that are nefarious cheaters, they're running rampant even more, because now the guys that are following the rules are under more scrutiny and more rules. And the guys that never followed the rules to begin with, they're having a field day, right? So it's a cat and mouse game. And as a trainer, you see it, you kind of know the guys that are doing what, but you just can't, you got to just throw your hands up, and you can't do anything about it. Just got to worry about yourself. But at the same time, it's a tough business right now.
So the HISA rules, I think, came into effect to try to lessen the amount of breakdowns that were causing a lot of bad publicity.
Yeah.
Do you think the rules will do that? It seems to me a lot of the things that, I had almost every horse I ever ran tapped at some point.
Yeah, of course.
Unless I only had a one start. So that was part of our maintenance. We didn't tap every joint. We tapped them when they had a problem so they can train, make them comfortable, but we give them time when it was necessary. We didn't play the game. We didn't play hardcore. So we didn't. So, but anyway, are the rules helping to prevent breakdowns, or are the rules just hurting the honest guy?
It's hurting the honest guy. There's maybe a couple rules that you could say, okay, maybe that's helping the horse a little bit. But at the end of the day, if the trainer can't help the horse by doing veterinary work, by doing maintenance, now you're going back to the drawing board. The trainer's got to look for alternatives, right? And a lot of guys are turning to maybe drugging or doing or doping, because now you can't help the horse legally. HISA is almost trying to get rid of ice. That's how crazy it is. They don't want us to ice. You can't put a horse in ice anymore. Before the race, you used to be able to put your horse in ice, boots. They don't want that.
Why not? What's wrong with ice?
They say because it's numbing the legs and the horse can go break down. When
But athletes
the
use ice.
argument is
Everyone uses ice.
every athlete that is in any sport uses ice. I've been using ice my whole life. My father uses ice. It's one of the most beneficial things that you could do to a horse that's not going to hurt him whatsoever,
No.
right? By the time the horse gets up to the paddock, his legs aren't frozen. It's just for swelling and all that stuff. It's not going to numb the horse's legs, but you're going to go. The horse doesn't feel anything. That's completely crazy. But that's what I'm saying. We're battling HISA that's just coming out of. They're just naive. They have a lot of people that aren't involved so much in horse racing. They're just maybe horse people in a different aspect of the business, and they're making the rules and they're kind of just making them as they go, and people are just going, okay, wow.
And it seems like to me, the HISA rules are going to affect the small craftsmen, the really good trainers that really give that 10 or 11 care to the horse and move them up more than the big guy, because the big guy has lots of horses. If the rules are hurting him, he's got a lot of horses to throw at the game.
Exactly. So you got a guy that has the 200 horses. He's got 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 that are starting to go a little bit downhill. What do? They liquidate. They're done. They drop them, or they sell them. Or a lot of these guys, they're not even letting the horses go into the general population because they don't want anybody to fix them and make them look better. So they retire them. Right. I know a couple big time trainers in New York that rather than drop the horse and put him into the population for the little horsemen to pick him up, they just rather retire him, because God forbid somebody takes that horse, puts him back together again, and makes him what he could have been, right?
Yeah.
A little like a younger horseman or an older horseman with not that many horses would take their time with that horse, develop them, fix them, and run them, and maybe make them into something. But now those horsemen aren't even letting you do that. If they can't do it with their horses, they retire them. It's done.
It seems like to me, Danny, it's hard for a trainer to show his value now. If you a lot of the things that I was accustomed to a trainer doing every day, the ice, the hose, all those things, the occasional tap, the well-timed tap, the using Lasix appropriately. These are the things that I paid the trainer to make these decisions about.
Correct.
What can a trainer do now to make himself stand out?
I mean, you could still, like I said, you can still tap, but the rules are now pushing you back 14 days plus the time you have to find the race. So you're looking at a 4-week window. You can still ice your horses. You just can't ice them before a race. You can still sweat and do the old school things. Again, it's just now, if a horse is hurt a little more than icing, you can't help them. You know, you can't really go there and help the horse. They're getting rid of all the therapeutics. They're making us, it used to be 24 hours. You can give a horse a bute shot before a race. Now it's 48 hours. So that shot 48 hours does nothing when it runs. Like, so if I do the horses in on Saturday, and we pre-race Thursday, by the time that pre-race hits by Saturday, it's not in the system. So it's like water. But the guys that are nefarious, they're not going to not do that, right? They're going to do something the day of or the day before that's going to give them an edge. And that's where I'm saying, like, it's just going to kills everybody else.
So do you think HISA needs to be revisited and changed, or do you think it needs to be just scrapped and allow another vehicle to try to police the game better than it was? Or go back to the old way?
I mean, the old way clearly wasn't working either. I'm not against HISA. I'm against them not rolling out the program and not being 100% ready. I think they needed another year of talking to real horsemen, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, seeing what actually helps the horses. The Lasix rules is ridiculous, especially with the young horses that could use Lasix. Now, if they suffer and bleed, you're done. Like, there's nothing you can do to help the horse. You know, you have a really nice stakes horse, you can't run on Lasix anymore, right? So it hurts your horse. Now, here's the other aspect. Say you're running, right? You're in the allowance races. You're allowed to be on Lasix. But now, if you want that same horse to run in a stake race, and you're asking him to run against better horses than he already is, he's not allowed on Lasix. So how's that going to help the horse, right? It won't. You're taking him off a performance drug that he's been on and telling him, okay, now run as fast as you can without it. You know? Oh, and then if you bleed, you get the horse gets suspended for like 14 days until we figure out why it bled. And we'll know why it bled. Well, the horse wasn't on Lasix.
Right. Well, Danny, you have a year-round circuit, which is great for horsemen to have a regular life. You're not you know, when I was young, started going to the races, you had, even in like Maryland, you'd have races in Hagerstown for a week. You'd
Yeah.
have, the racing population would travel to wherever the races were.
Yeah. Like the
And
circus.
they still do it in some, like in the Midwest. They go from Kentucky to the fairgrounds or whatever. But Philadelphia was different. You guys had year-round racing. It
Yeah.
was really the only track on that circuit. Penn National's a little bit different. And you can ship to Monmouth. You can go to Delaware, which is only 35 miles away or so. Maryland's not far away. You're well
Philadelphia
located.
is in a perfect location. We're an hour and 45 minutes from Aqueduct, 2 hours from Belmont, hour 20 from Monmouth, an hour to Delaware, 5 hours to Saratoga. I mean, location wise, we're great. Penn National, hour 45 minutes. So I can hit all these tracks within a 5 hour reach, right?
Yeah.
So Parx is great like that, and all year round it's great. But again, I think Parx and horse racing in general, back to our original point, is still missing the new clientele, still missing the new fan base. They're not doing anything to make their horsemen or jockeys superstars, right? They got to push us out there to say, hey, this is the product, and here are the horses, right? But we're not doing any of that.
And do you think the breakdowns, always on a big day, do you think it's hurting? You think that's hurting the ability to get owners?
I don't know if that's hurting so much the ability to get owners, because I think people that at least go to the races and watch that understand that maybe that part of the business is the ugly side, but they can get over that part pretty quick, because I don't see anybody going, oh my God, I'm never coming again after a horse breaks down. It's always tragic and sad. I wish that there was no breakdowns ever, but unfortunately, I don't know what we would ever have to do to make it a zero end game for horses never to break down again. I don't think that's even ever going to be on the table. There's always going to be accidents, no matter how much we are doing. With that said, I know our breakdowns. I don't know. I don't have the exact data, but I can tell you this much: in the last 5 years, our breakdowns have went down significantly. I know at Parx they have, because I talked to the management team, and I know that our breakdowns have actually went down. Obviously, it's always ugly when it's on TV or it's live, and like you said, on a big day, it happens. And it happens to Bob Baffert right in Preakness Day. It's insanity. So the sport gets hit a lot with that negative news. But yeah, I don't know if it's so much that is deterring the clientele. I just think not knowing, and people not even knowing how to get involved to begin with. There's no playbook to say, hey, buddy, I know you know nothing about horses, but here's a pamphlet that could tell you how to get a trainer, get a horse. There's none of that, right? There's not even a beginner's how to get a trainer, how to become a horse owner for dummies. There's no book for that. It's just like people either they know because they have a friend that has horses and maybe has somebody explain it to them like that, but there's no, there's just no information out there for the general public to get involved.
It's really tough. So I told you the story a little bit on your Facebook post. So I had a friend back in like 2004, 2005, maybe earlier than that. No, it was in the 90s. I won a race at Pimlico, and Edgar Pra was riding. And my friend just happened to be in town. He'd never been to the races in his life, and his mother was in town. They came to Pimlico. They won this big race. It was a 5-horse field off the turf, and my horse. It was a great win to win with Edgar, such a gentleman. So
of course,
about 10 years ago, he had a near-death experience. He had a heart attack or something, and when he thought on his deathbed, he says, if I ever get back to health, I'm going to buy horses. That experience you gave me, I want to do that.
Oh yeah.
So I said, well, I don't know if I'd recommend that, but So anyway, he got back to health. Extremely successful guy. So he started claiming horses out in Santa Anita and Delmore. He lives out on the West Coast, and had some luck. But I mean, the lies the trainers would tell him, and I would hear the things they would say. I couldn't believe it, and not just one or two, like 3 or 4 that he had horrible. The vet bills, unbelievable. And then he had some bad luck. A horse got claimed from him that ended up winning. The horse's name was Awesome Anywhere. Ended up winning a grade 2 race. So he just had that luck, but he stuck with it. And finally, I hooked him up with Damon, and I said, look, it's a little bit easier here. The surfaces aren't as hard. I think we don't train as hard on the East Coast. I think you'll have better luck here. And as soon as he came here, he did much better. I mean, it's the economics on the East are so much better than economics in the West.
The West is way worse.
Oh, it's horrible out there. And
Yeah.
I think the pressures that you talk about make the
Yeah.
trainers out there almost have to take advantage of owners
That's
because it's just so hard to make it work. I
it's
mean,
so hard to make it work. And honestly, my thing is my dad always made sure he goes, Danny, in horse racing, it's a small community. Don't lie to your owners. Don't lie. Don't lie. He goes, because it just takes one person. They go around the corner, they talk to maybe your groom, they run into something, and boom, now you're caught. So just be honest and don't lie. So I've always made sure. I always tell my guys, whether you're a new client or my guys have been with me for a long time, you can come to the barn whenever you want. You come check whatever you want, because I'm not hiding anything. If your horse is not okay, I tell you. If your horse is okay, I tell you. Like, I'm not going, oh, your horse is fine, but and your horse is walking around limping, right?
Yeah.
So very transparent that way. But at the end of the day, like you were about to say, there's horsemen out there that are just not as honest, and they're just trying to sustain, and they think by lying to some guy and it's going to help. And that guy now is sour grapes. He'll never come back to the business, right? Over one bad experience.
he's hanging in there, but
He's
I don't
hanging
know
in there,
how.
but
I mean,
I know guys that come in and they get some guy that lies and cheats them. They're done. They're never coming back. And that's why I think our horsemen, our professionals, have to take new clientele in and really, really treat them really well so they enjoy the sport. But also they have to understand it's a very risky business. When you say, oh, I want to invest, investing is when you're trying to get return on investment. Horse racing is so rocky. I always tell people, listen, is this your have fun money? Can you set it on fire? And they go, oh, I don't want to set it on fire. I was like, well, buying a racehorse, you might set it on fire. Just always know that risk is there, right? As fun as this business is, and when you win, you're not going to get that feeling anywhere else. But just know, like, it's not buying a property where you can resell. You know, you're not buying the stock where you can sell the stock even if it starts crashing. It's a horse. It's a breathing animal that you're responsible for now.
Yeah, you got to play the game breezy. You got to be relaxed. And you got to act like if you act like it's the last $10,000 that you have,
it's going to be a fail for you, because if it's your last 10 grand, I've never met a guy that puts his last 10 grand in and does well in this business, because you just can't, because now the pressure's on. You're putting the pressure on the trainer, the horse, and on your economics. You might as well just set that on fire.
So I met your dad. It was probably in the 80s. I was still a pretty young guy, and he had a horse ran down at Laurel, and he won. And I remember he's waiting for the horse to walk back into the paddock. He was just the nicest guy. And I went up to him and I said, congratulations, your horse ran good. He just smiled. He was so happy. He said, I really worked hard on this. He was so nice to me. He talked to me for like 5 minutes. He was just a very nice guy. What makes your dad, and he's still doing it, what makes your dad such a special trainer? Why is he so good at what he does?
Oh God, he's a horse whisperer. He's the guy that I always tell my dad, you could have been one of the biggest guys in this business, but he has a little bit of an edge to him. He left his house when he was 15, learned the language the hard way from Puerto Rico, came to New York. One of those stories where he was living in the stalls with the horses, and he's really, really, really lived the American dream and has done well in this business for him. But I always think that he could have done so much more. But he's a hard guy to deal with when it comes to his horses. It's his way or no way. He's very particular. He never let an owner bully him or tell him anything. He would just be like, oh, well, take the horse. Bye. Like, you're not going to tell me how to do my job. As opposed to like the newer guys like myself, like I'll eat a little crap from some guys once in a while, because I'm more, I didn't want to say that he was not business savvy, because he's always ran his business very well.
He's old school.
He's old school, right? There's no other words to say. He's just an old school guy, stuck on his ways, very good horseman. Could have grown past that if he could have been more business oriented, but he was just horses. This is what it is. Take it or leave it. And I think that's what made him so great, and what makes him so great to this day. He never sold out to the game.
Yeah. How did you enjoy being a jockey?
It was tough. My dad told me early on, you better do it now because you're going to get bigger and not taller, but just wider. Right. And, I turned 17, literally my birthday's December 20th. I turned 17, December 20th, and I rode my first race in January, fresh 17-year-old. I loved it. It was fun, but at the same time, I was struggling with the weight so bad. Maintaining that 110, 114 pound physique is not easy. I'm 200 pounds now. You know what I mean? It's very hard. And it was fun while it lasted. I had that experience. I know what jockeys go through. I see racing a little different than your regular folk, because I know I've been in the race. I know kind of like what's going on, what a jockey might be thinking, why they made a silly move. And I also, when a jockey does something silly on a horse, that you go, man, that was stupid. I go, okay, well, they only had a split second to make that decision. Like, I get it. Like,
Yeah. I
it's
thought you always did a really
it
good job. Philadelphia had that notorious dead rail. Sometimes,
dead
sometimes
rail.
you wanted to be in a 10 path there.
Yeah,
I always thought you had good discipline, that you would stay off that. You know, you don't want to shoot that rail, even though it's
no.
open, but you have no chance in there. And I always thought
Everybody knows people. It's quicksand there, right?
it's quicksand. And so you think you're doing something, and the announcer would say, "Hey, he's saving ground." Like, no,
Yeah, you're getting buried.
it's like,
It's so true.
so how did being a jockey help you be a better trainer?
Um, Definitely helped me early on in my career, because I would get on my own horses, and really feel them out and see if something was wrong with them, fix them. It gave me an edge that way. I am currently not getting on horses anymore. I had a really bad accident in 2021 when I was on the Derby Trail. I was on a pony, and I had a horse drop a rider maybe like 50 yards away from me, and I had my pony. I made a left-hand turn with the pony, minding my own business, and a loose horse rear-ended me, full speed. Me, the pony, and we all went flipping, and it was nasty. I haven't been on a horse since then, and I don't miss it because I don't want to get hurt anymore.
Right. So how about your dad? When you look at your training style, and I know times have changed probably,
Yeah.
but how has he influenced your training? Are you a much different trainer than Freddie?
I am a little bit. I took a lot of his knowledge and implemented it into my program. Clearly, I've made some adjustments on my own. And the one funny thing I could tell you this: my dad had me working since I was 13 years old. He goes, "If you don't like school, this is what you're going to figure out. Something, right? You're going to work. You're not going to be lazy." So I remember growing up from 13 up until until I became a jockey at 17. I never had a Sunday off. My friends would be out playing, doing this, doing that. Saturday night would come, I'd be out. It didn't matter. Be at work 5 a.m. So finally, when I did go out on my own, the one thing I did change, and I said, I'm going to do it for myself, is I give myself Sundays off.
Well, that's awesome.
It took
Yeah.
me all my life, then becoming my own boss, to be able to do that. But yeah.
Exactly. So, as a trainer, and I mean, you know, at the racetrack, you have the jockeys, you have the trainer, you have the valets,
Mhm.
you have the jockeys agents, you have the gate crew.
Yeah.
There's lots
Yeah.
of different employees. When you look around, who are the people that are still doing well? Is it like the jockeys are still okay?
Well, I'll
What-
tell
what-
you
what-
another thing
what's that?
that is extremely mind-boggling right now. There's a lack of veterinary assistance on the backside. There used to be 10 veterinarians back there. We have 3 now. There used to be a surplus of farriers. We have 3 now.
Wow.
3 total for a whole backside of horses, and 3 veterinary practices for a whole backside of horses. So if that's not sounding the alarms, I don't know what is. So basically, there's a lack of veterinarian people coming out of med school that want to be into equine horse racing. They're not doing it anymore. There's no farriers. So now, like, my best friend is a farrier. His name's Richie Vermeeren. Very good farrier. He tells me, Danny, there always was a couple kids following my dad around back in the day, trying to figure out how to be a blacksmith or figure out a craft. Nobody. There's no apprentices anymore. There's not one kid on the backside that's following around the old blacksmith to learn to become the future of the business. There's none. So we got 3 blacksmiths, the whole backside, 3 veterinary practices, the whole backside. That is nothing, right? So that's where our vets are overwhelmed. Our farriers are overwhelmed. It used to be where I used to call my farrier. He'd be right there, shoe the horse that I want. Now it's like you're on a waiting list. And it's not because they don't want to do it. It's because they have to get the racers. They want the horses that are running that day, shoe them over the horse that's jogging tomorrow. So I understand. Same thing with the vets. They're maxed out. They have no help. They have nobody that's coming in to relieve them from the work. So it's killing them. And then on top of that, HISA is throwing all these new rules and regulations. And guess what? There's no state vets to put those rules out and tell everybody, hey, these are the rules. We have a lack of state vets. We have a lack of farriers. We have a lack of private veterinarians coming in. And from what I understand, talking to Dr. Keegan, my private vet at Parx, he tells me, Danny, there's nobody, no fresh blood coming in saying, man, coming straight out of veterinary school, I want to go to the racetrack and become a vet for equine racehorses. There's none. They're going into small animal practice, dogs, cats, goats, anything but horse racing. Even if they go into horses, it's equine, the hunters, jumpers, and all that. They're not coming to the racetrack.
I don't think people want to work anymore, though. I think that we're losing our blue collar. We're losing our blue collar base, and applications to college is down too. It's almost like
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And speaking of that as well, as a trainer, to find help for me in general, just to find a groom, find a hot walker, find an exercise rider, and have that team and make it doable where they're at least knowledgeable of the horse, it's damn wet impossible now. Because now all the older grooms that used to be the old, really good grooms, they're dying off. All the good exercise riders that used to be around, they're dying off. There's not a big generation of guys coming in saying, I want to be a groom, I want to work with horses. That's dying off. So we're in a world of trouble right now. And I think I'm sounding the alarm because I think a lot of people are living in la la land in horse racing, even just at Parx. They're not seeing it for what I see it. I'm seeing a big mess, and it's not looking good on many angles.
Do you think the bigger operations are able to overpay for those positions? That's how they're
Yeah,
able to...
yeah, absolutely. Like we have a top trainer here, and he overpays for some of the positions. He's given a lot more money than a little guy is for his exercise riders.
Yeah.
So they're going to opt to go there. If you can give them $1,000 as opposed to $700, they're going to go to the $1,000 job, right? So that's another problem. The bigger outfits with more money, they can pay a little more, and they're going to grab all the help that's out there left over, right? If one guy's like, man, I can get a job with Danny for $110 a horse, but this guy over here is paying me $130 a horse, where are you going to go, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same groom. It doesn't make him any better. It's a guy that's probably limited on knowledge of horses, but he's going to get the job there because trainers need bodies to do stalls, to put the saddles on, send the horses out. And at this point, we're not too picky on who we hire. A lot of times it's just to get me a body, get me a human being to pick a stall, and good luck, right? So I'm sounding the alarm on all those angles. I see nothing but in the next 10 years, I don't know what's going to happen, because if there's no vet practices coming into Parx, there's no new farriers, who's going to shoe the horses? Who's going to be the vets, right?
When I was talking to you earlier about my friend Damon down in Maryland, he has 3 or 4 sons working with him, his wife. I mean, so you can't really find help. So, he has a huge family that can help. Otherwise, that's
how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? And that's where the precipice is. Like, how am I going to maintain my livelihood with lack of clientele, lack of new eyeballs into the sport, and lack of help in general to get my horses there? Because without a good vet, you're nothing. Without a good farrier, you're nothing.
Yeah.
And they're dwindling down.
Yes, that's a factor that I hadn't thought about that people should be talking about too.
Absolutely.
I knew there was a big vet retired in Maryland. I'm like, his name was Dr. Palmer. He was amazing.
Yeah, he was amazing.
He was amazing. And he was so cheap, and he's gone. And so I was just like, whoo, I got out of the game right at the right time. Before we get to maybe possible solutions, I did want to ask you one question. You're bilingual, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. How is the fact that there's so many Latino riders, has it changed the way the races are run as a style? I remember when you were young, it was Anthony Black, it was Jeff Lloyd,
Stu Elliott.
But now almost every track, Latino riders dominate.
They dominate.
Has it
Absolutely.
changed the way the jockeys get along? Has it changed the way the races are run?
I don't think that so much has changed. I think our Latin riders and our white boy riders all always been really good riders, aggressive. Tony Black is a legend. Stu Elliott, as we know, is a legend. I mean, these guys are the best of the best at their craft. And I just think Latin guys are good because we're naturally short guys, right? And a good build. And I think the one thing that Latin people can be good for is definitely horse racing and boxing. We're little, right?
Soccer too.
And soccer. Oh yeah, definitely soccer. And that's where we thrive there. So yeah, I don't think the environment as being a jockey, whether Latin or not, has changed at all. I think the jocks room's always going to be the jocks room. They're always going to be little fights and people bickering, but a little good community. They all get along. They're all good kids. The one thing I can tell you this, and I laugh about it now, when I was a jockey back in the day, we certainly had way more fun. These kids now, they're coming in, they're talking about their 401ks and they're saving money and they're doing good. I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. I went and bought cars and stupid stuff and acted hood rich. It was just terrible. These kids are all like, oh no, I'm putting my money away. I got to do that. I'm like, well, good for you. Good for you. Because nobody taught me that.
Yeah, no, exactly right with the riders. Well, I guess we should probably at least end with try to maybe some solutions. I think one of the problems that we have is sports betting is getting more and more legal and more available. So that's always going to be huge competition for horses because there's so many more sports. It's on all the time, and racing is limited by the number of horses you have. Tracks that run, you can only run so many races. So that's going to be a challenge, and that's not going to make it any easier to get owners in. What are some of the things that we can recommend that people do to help to bring new people to the game? Is there anything that we should be doing that we're not doing?
I know we should publicize a little more. We got to get more in tune with social media. I think tracks are lacking there. I mean, I know they're trying Instagram, they're trying Twitter and stuff, but I don't think they're hosting it correctly. I think they're focusing a lot on the horse and a lot on the betting public, but I think there's more stories behind the scenes if they could follow the jockeys around a little more, get a little more personal with them, follow a couple of the good horsemen around, get a little more personal with them, more of a behind the scenes, really boisting up the voices of the horsemen, the jockeys, the people in the business itself, and then like boisting up even the owners, that the big guys that are in the business, putting their money up, making them more of a public figure. I think the racetrack always seems like there's a wool of secrecy and like, oh, you got to zig and zag, everything's so quiet. And yeah, it used to be like that, but I have voiced my opinion saying, hey, we have to get more public. We have to be more transparent to the public. Like, hey, these are the horses, these are the trainers. Got to make it hip at some point because the fan base is dying. There's nobody trying to get involved, whether the fan base or even the work, right? I don't see any young guys, like we were just talking about, the no farriers, there's no vets. Without any of that, in the next 10 years, we're in serious trouble, right? And people aren't talking about it. They're just kind of going, oh, Kentucky Derby's coming up, the Breeders' Cup, and that's fine and dandy. That's going to be around, but you're gonna kill everything else around it. There's not gonna be much.
Yeah, social media is important. I also wish there was a way to get old school media back. I remember when I was a kid. I mean, I was interested in the races because my grandfather would take me, and I had a friend whose father would take us up to Charlestown. But every day, the Washington Post they had the results and the charts in the sports page. So I'd read them without even having the form. I see the names, the jockeys. So I knew the racing was an everyday thing. I didn't just wait for the Kentucky Derby and watch it on TV once a year. I knew the races. I saw the races every day in the sports page.
It's almost as simple as if like ABC News, NBC News, our local news would just say, oh, and for today's the 10 races at Parx, these were the winning horses with the trainers and stuff. Yeah. Every day, if the news could just broadcast the results and the trainers and the horses that won for the day, it would. I know if I'm watching the news, I go, oh, Parx. Even though it could be subconsciously that you don't really care, if you watch it enough and it's on your local news every day, the results of the horse racing, you're going to go, oh, maybe we should go there one day. And it might pick up one person and pick up two. Like, we're not doing any of that. It's like we're just behind this dark cloth and people has to peek in and see what we're doing. And that's not the way it should be. We got to be more transparent in the sport. We got to get more people involved. We just need workers. We need fan base. We just need it all because it's really dwindling. And I see it. I feel it right now. Like I feel it with myself. I'm going, what's going on? Where are my future clients at that I can't find? Right.
Yeah. I feel like when I used to vacation in Del Mar every August for a week, and you felt racing was everywhere. And they do a really good job for that 1 month a year. I guess they have 2 weeks now, but they really get the racing into the culture. And I felt that way. It was in DC. And they used to even show the feature winner on the sports, and they would show on cable, they had the replay show on every night. So
Yeah.
you really have to be kind of in the racing game.
In the racing
we
game.
are to actually
Mhm.
know what's unless it's the Derby or maybe
Yeah.
maybe the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah,
But
maybe. But if you're not involved, you don't know. It's like if I'm watching TV and I don't follow baseball, but I'll see the results up on baseball, I'll know what's going on for the brief second because the news is saying it, right? We need our local news to say the same thing. Yeah, in race 2, Danny Velazquez won. In race 3, we had whatever, but just throw it up there daily. It would take a 3-minute spot. We just it just it's frustrating. This business has me frustrated on so many levels when it comes to that. Something that I love so much and dear to my heart. It's just frustrating to see and sad to see at the same time.
Well, I think there is some ray of hope. So I have a Facebook group. I don't know if you remember. It's called Handicappers Insight. I think you're on there, but it's
Okay,
like
if not, I will be.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 members. I have a lot of jockeys, and it's
Okay.
it's a smaller group, but I've been doing it for a while, and there's an exchange of ideas. We have some really high profile handicappers on there, but there's another group called Live and Breathe Horse Racing or something like that. It's like
Okay.
8,000 members, and
Wow.
these people are on there all the time talking about their picks. And I see some jockeys and some trainers on there. There might be a way for social media to really fill in the gaps here.
Yeah.
I do. It's probably the only way because it's free and there is an exchange of
Yeah.
information. This guy named Gabriel Barteran does a great job, and I know if a trainer, a guy like you, I know your quality, you're good. The
Yeah.
problem with it is, I just happen to follow you on Facebook. I've
Yeah.
had the hardest time finding my friend trainers.
Yeah.
We couldn't find one person in California that was kind of like a mid-sized guy that gave you that really good service.
Yeah.
The hose on the knees, the
Yeah.
stuff you don't
Yep.
have to, the stuff you don't have to pay for.
Doing
Anyone,
the teeth, ulcer guards, and all that.
all this stuff. Anyone can charge you a $2,000 vet bill and improve a horse.
Anybody.
You want the hard work that goes into that. That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
find. And I know
Yeah.
guys like you. There's guys I know around here can do that, but
Yeah.
I think there's a disconnect in getting the money to those people. And
Yeah.
maybe they want the status of having, Pletcher with the aviator glasses and, Baffert
Yeah.
maybe that's what they want.
It's great. That's all fine and dandy, but those guys are also. How much longer does Baffert have? He's not a young buck, right?
Yeah.
Pletcher, he seems like he's still healthy and great, but these guys are going to 10, 15, 20-year window, maybe.
Yeah.
Brad Cox is a young guy. Safi Joseph is a young guy. They're doing great. Kudos to them. But they're in the bigger leagues. They're at Gulfstream. They're in Kentucky. They have that. But I think where I'm at Parx, which it's a track that can be great, has all the potential in the world, but it's lacking a lot of the new genre of people just trying to come in here. And I think this year we just did stall laps, and from my understanding, I don't think we have a lot of people trying to come in this year. So
Yeah. Do you think, and I know you're going to shoot this down, but do you think tracks should look at limiting the number of stalls so the big guys can't take all the stalls? Will that help at all?
Well, Parx limits you to one barn.
Mhm.
So they say, right? So, but that doesn't stop you from having 40 and another 40 at a different place, then ship them in and ship them out. So that I think one barn is sufficient. I think once you start going over 150 horses, it's insane. It's insanity. The trainer, those horses are just numbers. There's no way when you got guys going, oh, I know every horse. All 150 horses. If I just, I bring them out, every single one. No way, right?
Yeah.
Those guys will tell you that, and whatever. I have trouble with the 20 sometimes. I'm looking, going, who's that, real quick, So if they say they can do it, good. But I think that's where it kills everybody else. Like if you have all the horses, there could be 10 more trainers out there that could have 10 of those horses, 15 of those horses, 20 of those horses, but there's not.
Yeah, and if you really want to learn about the game and be part of the enterprise, if you have a mid-sized trainer you have a relationship with, it's the best situation. I've had trainers with only a couple of horses, and that can be difficult because you feel the pressure's on you to claim more horses than you may want, and
exactly.
things come up and you feel like you have to pay for it. So sometimes, and I don't want to. There's some great trainers that only have a couple of horses. I definitely don't want to attack them because they're wonderful. But sometimes a mid-sized trainer, you can still have a say in what goes on. If you want to claim a horse, they'll listen to your handicapping ideas.
Yeah.
These big guys, they're
They're
gonna
not
look at you and
listening to
kind of,
you.
they may act like they're listening to you, but they're probably they're kind of laughing at you a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you
because
can
they
build a
don't care.
relationship with a guy your size, it really is it could be a really special thing. I had some
Yeah, I
amazing
have great
moments.
relationships with my clients that have been with me a long time. They call me, we talk, we laugh, we have good moments, we have bad moments, but because it's horse racing, you know, we have horses get hurt or something happens to a horse that, you know, the horse has to be put down, and that's a bad moment you have to live with somebody with, go through with a client like, hey, I have to put your horse down, he colic. That's not a call I want to make, but guys that have been in the business long enough understand all the ins and outs of the game, and they know that that can happen just as much as you can go win races, right? And if you could take the good with the bad, you can be successful in this business, right? But there's people that are in denial about the bad part, and they don't want to even ride it out. They just wash their hands with it and say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, Danny, I really enjoyed this, man. You got some great ideas. Hopefully,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
hopefully,
having me.
we can have an impact. I'll, if I have people who are looking for trainers out east, I'll definitely give them
Yes.
their name and you can talk to them. I think they do themselves a service by giving you a
And I
shot.
think you're doing a good job if you can interview more trainers and get more people on your platform and give them a voice. It'd be great.
Yeah, I'd
You
love to.
know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love to talk. I love to talk racing. So it's an amazing game, but unfortunately,
Yes.
as you're talking about it, fewer and fewer of us every
Yeah.
year are enjoying it. So
Yep. Yep. It's
it's
a complex game that I think has a lot of potential. We just need to get it out there again.
yeah, we may have to reconfigure it. We may have to race a little bit less and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's so tricky because you guys need to make money to race more, but the horses
Yeah.
not have horses. There's a lot of different factors that are going
It's
in
a lot of
here.
variables that are tricky right now, and I'm aware of it all. It's
Yeah.
just trying to figure out a healthy balance so everybody can be happy and the business can thrive and move forward and get some new fans, man.
It's a new fan. Yeah. Well, look, Danny, I enjoyed meeting you, man.
I
Let's keep in
appreciate
touch
it.
and maybe
Yes, sir.
come on and do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Danny. Have a good day now, buddy.